Welcome in, everyone. Ready for a deep dive into the French Revolution.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's going to be a fascinating one, I think, because we're working with a transcript today.
Interesting.
So kind of a behind-the-scenes peek at how historians piece together these huge narratives.
Right.
But, it's not just about remembering all the dates and the battles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The French Revolution is really a story about power and about social upheaval.
Absolutely.
And ideas that I think really still resonate with us today in the 21st century.
And what's really interesting is when we think about revolutions, a lot of times we think of like very clear-cut good versus bad, kind of these forces. But the French Revolution, I think, is much more nuanced than that.
Right.
You see how these enlightened ideals even can have kind of a dark side sometimes.
Yeah.
And how this quest for liberty, in a way, paved the way for some new forms of tyranny. So it's going to be really fascinating to explore that.
Absolutely. And we're going to unpack that, I think, in a really interesting way today with this transcript by looking at how women played a role in this.
Yeah.
Which, a lot of times they get kind of sidelined in the history books.
Definitely.
And then, of course, there's the rise of Napoleon.
Right.
This almost mythical figure.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does a revolution that's aimed at dismantling absolute power end up with an emperor?
Yeah. Great question.
It's a big question. So by the end of this deep dive, I think we're really going to understand not just, what happened,
Yeah.
but why it matters to us even now.
I think so.
All right, so let's set the stage.
Okay.
This transcript drops us right into France before the revolution.
Mm-hmm.
A world that's structured so differently from our own.
Right.
It's almost like time travel.
Yeah.
So, imagine a society that's divided into these three estates.
Right.
We've got the clergy.
Yeah.
They wield this massive religious and political power.
Right.
Then you have the nobility with their super opulent lifestyles,
Yeah.
practically exempt from taxes.
Right.
And then you have everybody else.
Everyone else in the third estate.
The third estate,
Yeah.
the farmers, the shopkeepers, the laborers.
Yeah.
Basically, the people who are making the country run.
Yes.
And yet, they're bearing the brunt of all the taxes
Right.
while barely, kind of scraping by.
Yeah.
My heart goes out to those guys.
Yeah. And I think understanding that rigid hierarchy is so important because it's like the pressure cooker for the revolution.
Right.
So the transcript really emphasizes how that inequality combined with, France was having all these economic woes.
Yeah.
War debts, bad harvest. There was starting to be this industrial change that was making people nervous.
Right.
So it created just this absolute tinderbox.
Right. And then we have Louis XVI entering the picture.
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit,
Okay.
I always kind of pictured him as like the mustache-twirling villain.
Yeah,
But this transcript paints a slightly more complex picture.
it does.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does.
He wasn't a classic tyrant.
Right.
He seems to be this young, a little bit insecure, but actually wanted to be liked by the people.
Yeah.
You
Interesting.
almost tragic in a way.
Almost tragic, yeah.
And he actually tried to do some financial reforms to tackle the debt.
Yeah.
But those were fiercely opposed by the nobility and the clergy who wanted to cling to all of their privileges.
Well, yeah, of course they would.
Of course, yeah.
Talk about a king caught between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
He's trying to modernize while facing all this pushback from the people who are benefiting the most from the old way of doing things.
It's a lesson that has echoed throughout history, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has.
That even when you've got well-intentioned leaders, they can fail if they don't have the support to really challenge those deeply entrenched systems.
Right. And then you have Marie Antoinette.
Oh, yeah.
Who, even if she never actually said, let them eat cake,
Right, right.
that quote perfectly sums up how out of touch
Yeah.
the monarchy seemed from what the people were actually going through.
Yeah.
Their
It really does.
struggles.
And it's a great example of how a story, even if it's untrue, can kind of capture the public imagination
Right,
and become more powerful than the actual facts.
right. Yeah, very true. So the transcript highlights how that growing disconnect between the monarchy and the people,
Yeah,
paired with the rising food prices.
of course.
And then you start to have, these whispers of Enlightenment ideas,
Yeah,
questioning authority, demanding rights.
right.
All of that stuff kind of comes together and makes 1789 this year where things really begin to change.
1789, the year that things explode.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Louis XVI is desperate for solutions.
Yeah.
He calls a meeting of the Estates General, which is this, representative body from all three estates.
Right.
Thinking, okay, we're going to compromise here.
Right. But it backfires in a really spectacular way.
Yeah.
Right.
This is where the Third Estate says, hold on a second.
Yeah.
We're the majority here.
Yeah.
We deserve a bigger say in what's going on.
Right.
So they break off.
Yes.
They form the National Assembly.
The National Assembly.
And they claim to represent the true will of the French people.
Right.
That's a bold move.
Very bold move.
It's a really bold move.
Yeah.
And it's a huge shift, right?
Huge.
Like that challenge to the king's absolute power is out in the open.
It's right there for everyone to see.
And that's how the revolution begins.
The revolution has begun.
And then, of course, you have the storming of the Bastille.
Of course, yeah.
On July 14th.
Right.
The ultimate symbol of royal oppression.
The ultimate symbol.
I always get chills.
Yeah.
When I picture those crowds fueled by hope and anger.
Yeah.
Tearing down this symbol of tyranny.
That's what's so powerful about symbols.
Yeah. The Bastille wasn't just a prison.
Right.
Its fall really represented the crumbling of an entire system.
Right. It did, yeah.
You know what I think is interesting is the transcript also reminds us that revolutions are not neat and tidy.
No, they're not. So
you have this thing that's called the Great Fear.
Oh, yeah.
This wave of panic that sweeps through the countryside.
Yeah.
The peasants are terrified of these counter-revolutionaries.
Right.
And they start lashing out against the nobles.
Yeah.
Fueled by all these rumors and paranoia.
Right.
And it just shows how easily even these revolutionary ideals can be twisted into justifications for violence.
Yeah.
Even by those who are seeking liberation.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Right.
Yeah, good point. And in the midst of all this chaos, the National Assembly manages to produce this landmark document. Oh, yeah. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen.
Right.
Which is huge, right?
Liberty, property, security, resistance to oppression.
Yeah.
It's like a blueprint for a whole new society.
It really is.
Yeah.
And its influence is huge.
Huge.
Think about, all of these modern human rights movements.
Yeah.
All the demands for democracy all over the world.
Yeah.
Those echoes go straight back to that declaration that was written during the French Revolution.
Exactly.
But like you said earlier, things aren't so simple.
Right.
The transcript points out that as groundbreaking as this document was, it still had these blind spots.
Right.
Like no rights for women.
Of course.
Silent on slavery.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it shows that even revolutions can have their limitations.
Absolutely.
It's interesting.
It's a very sobering reminder, I think, that progress is rarely a straight line. Right. Even the most radical changes sometimes can fall short of true equality for all.
Yeah, very true, very true. And now this is where the revolution gets even more fascinating because things start to take this really radical turn.
Oh, yeah.
And women, who are often overlooked in history, step on the center stage.
Yes, finally.
Think about the Women's March on Versailles.
Right.
In October of 1789.
Yeah.
Driven by food shortages.
Right.
But also demanding political change.
Right.
They marched all these miles.
Yeah.
To confront Louis XVI himself.
Right.
Yeah. These women who were excluded from any kind of formal power.
Yeah.
Directly forced the king to accept these reforms.
Yeah.
And to move to Paris.
Right.
It's amazing how these women who were so often just kind of dismissed as wives or as mothers.
Right.
Become a driving force in this revolution.
And it's incredible, isn't it? It really is.
It really is.
It really shows how those who are marginalized by the system can become some of the most powerful agents of change.
Right.
And as the revolution radicalizes, you start to see these new fault lines emerge.
Right.
Yeah. The transcript talks about the Girondins, representing the more moderate upper classes.
Right.
And then you have the Jacobins, who are aligned with the working classes, pushing for this much more drastic change.
Yeah. Right.
So even within the revolution, there's this debate about, how far do we go? How fast do we go?
Right.
And then you have these external pressures that are going to add fuel to the fire.
Right. Because it's not just those internal divisions, right?
Right.
You have war that breaks out with Austria and Prussia.
Yeah.
because they're terrified that this revolution is going to spread.
Yeah, they don't want it to jump their borders.
Yeah, into their own lands.
Yeah.
And that just ramps up the paranoia.
Absolutely.
And the radicalization
yeah.
back in France.
Right. And, those external threats often have that effect.
Yeah, right.
They make internal divisions seem even more dangerous.
Right.
And it pushes those in power towards more extreme measures.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is what kind of leads us into, I think, the darkest chapter of the revolution.
Right.
The Reign of Terror.
Yeah, the Reign of Terror. So the transcript introduces us to Maximilien Robespierre.
Yes.
This almost chillingly intellectual figure.
Right.
Leading the Committee of Public Safety.
Yes.
The irony always kind of gets me. A committee with a name like that.
Right.
Responsible for so much bloodshed.
Yeah, the revolution's great paradox, isn't it?
It really is.
That this pursuit of a more just society leads to such brutality,
right. Yeah.
And the Revolutionary Tribunal under Robespierre sends thousands to the guillotine.
Right.
Often on very flimsy suspicions.
Yeah, you're guilty by association.
Guilty by association, yeah.
By rumor.
By fear.
By fear, yeah.
Yeah.
It's this really stark reminder.
I think so.
That revolutions, even those with the most noble goals, can descend into these cycles of fear and violence.
Right. Yeah.
It makes you think, did the revolution kind of devour its own children?
That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's one that historians are still debating.
Right.
Was Robespierre a ruthless dictator?
Yeah.
Or was he a product of this chaos?
Right.
Yeah. Was he kind of forced into these extreme measures?
Right.
Regardless, his rule creates this deep yearning for stability.
Right.
For order.
Yeah.
And that's going to open the door for somebody like Napoleon Bonaparte.
Right, Napoleon.
Here he comes.
The transcript details his early military brilliance.
Yes.
Especially, during the Siege of Toulon in 1793.
Right.
It's like he's almost destined for greatness.
Yeah, he's rising through the ranks with lightning speed.
Yeah, he is.
He's a master strategist.
Yeah.
And he's seizing these opportunities.
Yeah.
Amidst the chaos,
Yeah.
And I think his rise is really inseparable from the instability of the revolution.
Yeah. Right.
The Directory, the government after Robespierre is very weak.
Yeah.
They're plagued by all kinds of economic problems.
Yeah.
And so these are just perfect conditions for somebody like Napoleon to step in.
Right. So even though the revolution was supposed to be all about ending absolute power.
Yeah.
In a way, it kind of paved the way for another strong man to come into power.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
But, Napoleon is clever.
Yeah.
He presents himself not as rejecting the revolution.
Right.
But as its champion.
Right.
As its protector.
Right.
Even as he's consolidating his own power.
Right. So it's less a break with the revolution and more like a twisting of its path.
Right. A twisting of the path.
And he enacts some policies that actually do reflect some of those revolutionary goals.
He does.
Right. Like, I'm thinking about legal reform.
Yeah, legal reforms.
A centralized bureaucracy.
Yeah.
A system of meritocracy instead of just inherited privilege.
Right.
Yeah. All of that shakes up the old order.
And don't forget the Bank of France.
Oh, yeah, the Bank of France.
That brings some much-needed stability after all these years of upheaval.
Yeah, I bet. I can just picture France at this point just exhausted from all this chaos.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Maybe thinking, okay, a little strong leadership might not be so bad.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's easy for us to judge from our perspective.
Yeah.
But you have to imagine living through all that turmoil.
Yeah.
Stability is going to start looking very attractive.
Yeah, for sure.
And, while Napoleon curtails some of the more radical social reforms,
yeah,
he does keep some key elements.
Right.
Like religious tolerance, the end of feudalism.
Right.
These remain in place.
Right. So he's like this shrewd editor kind of taking the parts of the revolution that serve his purpose and leaving others behind.
A shrewd editor. Yes. Very good way to put it.
It's almost more revolutionary than just rejecting it outright.
Right.
Isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
He understands the power of ideas.
Right.
So he promotes this vision of a united French nation.
Yeah.
Under his leadership.
Yeah.
Drawing on that revolutionary spirit of fraternity.
Right.
But of course, this unity comes at a price.
Right.
Dissent is silenced. Yeah. Power is going to be concentrated in his hands.
Right. And let's not forget, his empires is built on conquest.
Right.
All those Napoleonic wars.
Well, Napoleonic wars, yeah.
Spreading across Europe.
Right.
You know.
And, ambition fuels his rise.
Yeah.
But those conquests also have these really unintended consequences,
right.
you know.
Yeah.
The transcript talks about how they lead to republics in other countries.
Oh, yeah.
Like Switzerland,
Yeah.
Italy,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
This weakening of the old monarchical order
Yeah.
all across Europe. That's partially thanks to Napoleon.
Right, right.
However, unintentionally.
It's amazing how one figure can just embody all these contradictions.
It really is, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He's the emperor who rises from a revolution aimed at dismantling emperors.
Right.
He spreads revolutionary ideals through conquest.
Right.
How do you even wrap your head around that?
That's what makes history so captivating.
It really is,
It's not neat or simple.
Yeah, it's not.
And this brings us to a bigger question.
Okay.
Did the French Revolution succeed?
Right.
Or was it betrayed?
Right. That's the question that we've been kind of dancing around this whole time.
I think so, yeah.
What do we make of this messy, violent, inspiring, ultimately paradoxical event?
Yeah.
You know?
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
It definitely had a seismic impact on France.
Right, right.
That's undeniable.
Yeah.
You know, the old order is completely shattered.
Yeah, totally.
But the legacy goes so far beyond its borders.
It does, yeah.
You know?
The transcript emphasizes how the revolution's ideals,
Yes.
liberty, equality, fraternity,
Right.
become this global rallying cry.
It's true.
You know, think about movements for democracy, for human rights.
Yeah.
Even today,
Yeah.
they're drawing inspiration from these heady days
Totally.
in France.
It's the power of ideas unleashed.
It is.
You know?
Yeah.
The French Revolution proved
Yeah.
that these seemingly unshakable power structures
Yeah.
are vulnerable.
Yeah.
That ordinary people, when they're united around a common cause,
Yeah.
can change the course of history.
Yeah.
And that lesson is as relevant today
Yeah.
as it was in 1789.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm thinking about all the protests that we see all over the world.
Yeah.
People demanding their rights,
Yes.
demanding change.
Yeah.
It's like that revolutionary spirit, however flawed its origins might be,
Yeah.
is still burning bright.
Exactly. And, you know, some people might say that Napoleon betrayed those revolutionary goals. Right?
You know?
Yeah. But in a way, he also spread them. Right. It's this legacy that keeps evolving
Yeah.
with echoes that we're still grappling with today.
This is really blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it?
What started as this deep dive into a transcript
Yeah.
has turned into this whole exploration of revolution
Right.
and power and, you know,
Yeah.
the struggle for a better world.
That's the magic of history, isn't it?
It really is.
It's not just about the past.
Right.
It's about understanding ourselves and our present
Yeah.
and the forces that are shaping our world.
Okay, before we get too philosophical here,
Okay.
let's bring it back to our listener.
Okay.
You know you've been with us on this whirlwind tour
Yeah.
of the French Revolution.
Right.
What stands out to you so far?
Yeah, what resonates the most?
You know,
Yeah.
what's really sticking with you?
Because we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we have.
But the French Revolution is a story that just keeps unfolding.
Right.
And each of us, I think, has to kind of decide what lessons we draw from it
Right.
and how its echoes speak to us in the 21st century.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Okay, so we've made this incredible journey through the French Revolution.
Yeah.
The soaring ideals, the brutal realities,
Yeah, it's quite a story.
complex figures like Napoleon,
Yeah.
you know, who kind of embody both.
Right, right.
But the question I think that's on everyone's mind is,
Yeah.
what does it all mean for us today?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it happened so long ago.
Yeah.
Do those events really have any relevance?
Well, you know, I think the echoes of the French Revolution are all around us.
Right.
More than we realize, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, those core ideals, liberty, equality, fraternity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they're woven into the fabric of modern democracies.
I mean, you're right. You think about these movements we see today all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
People fighting for social justice.
Yeah.
Fighting for human rights.
Yeah.
For a voice in their government.
Right.
I mean, they're all drawing on that legacy.
Yeah, I think so.
That spark that was ignited centuries ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's mind-blowing how something that happened so far back that continued to kind of challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
And to push us towards progress.
Right. Even if that progress is messy.
Yeah, it is.
And it takes time.
It does. It does.
So it's like the revolution planted a seed.
Right.
And now it's grown into this whole forest of ideas
A forest of ideas, yeah.
about how we organize our societies,
Yeah.
who holds power,
Yeah.
how we treat each other.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor. That's a great way to put it.
Right.
And that forest is still growing and changing, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, we face different challenges than those revolutionaries in 1789.
Of course. Yeah.
But those core principles, human dignity,
Yeah.
the pursuit of justice,
Right.
the right to self-determination.
Those are timeless.
So really, it's less about, memorizing all the dates and the names.
Right.
It's more about this ongoing conversation.
Yes, I think so.
But what it means to be free,
Yeah.
what it means to be equal,
Right.
and how we build a society. Yeah.
That lives up to those ideals.
That's the key question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And it's a conversation that we all need to be a part of.
I think so, yeah.
The French Revolution reminds us, I think,
Yeah.
that we can't take progress for granted.
Right.
The fight for liberty and equality demands constant vigilance,
Yeah.
constant pushing forward.
Right.
That struggle is never truly over.
Wow. That's powerful. That's a powerful thought. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's one final takeaway you
Yeah.
want to leave our listener with?
Okay.
Something for them to kind of ponder,
All right. Yeah.
maybe even spark some action.
Well, I think it's this. The French Revolution was messy.
Yeah, it was.
It was flawed,
Yeah.
full of contradictions.
Yeah.
But it was also this amazing testament to the human capacity for courage,
Yeah.
for idealism,
Right.
for believing in a better future and fighting for it.
Absolutely.
And that spirit,
Yeah.
that revolutionary spirit.
It's within each of us, I think.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to tap into that,
Right.
to make the world a more just and equitable place.
Yeah.
Even if it's just in our own little corner of it.
Well said. Well said. And on that note, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the French Revolution.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been a journey through history,
It has.
but also a reflection on our present
Absolutely.
and the future that we're all creating together.
I think so.
So until next time, keep questioning, keep pushing for progress, and keep that revolutionary spirit burning bright.